Hello there everyone, and welcome back. It's time to continue on my rank progression, and we're going to be faced off against Asigoth again, who of course is going to be utilizing the double Voidstalker fleet. Hell, I'm pretty certain this is maybe the same player I gone up against before, way back when I had to deal with consistent and a regular amount of double not double Corsair, but double Voidstalker type of fleet. So, I am kind of prepared for this, and especially with what we witnessed before, it is pretty damn possible for me to win this match. Although, I'm going to look into at least how I can improve on the play and maybe refine it some, since in this case, I decided to swap out the supercharged Void Shield altogether just due to how difficult it might be to utilize it. It would be great at stalling the second Voidstalker if it happens to chase after me, I suppose, but I would need incredibly good awareness to be and at least keep in mind where my flagship is at all times to make sure it's the one getting shot at. Because the supercharged Void Shield does me very little use if it's not the one being primed, especially when I'm chasing one of the Voidstalkers down. And so I decided to opt it down for, or at least opt out rather, for the Emperor's Turret. And this is convenient for if my opponent thinks they're able to conceal themselves, well then they're suddenly revealed for 90 seconds. And this map kind of is good for me to at least combo with the Emperor's Turret at the very least. I have that going for me. I do boost with everything though, but I think, I have emission dissipators on my light crews or frigates there. So if I can learn to keep these things from dying, they could be good long term, but in all honesty, I think it's best to just keep these things hanging back until we're getting to the point where I kill off one of the Voidstalkers and then use it to kind of force a reveal on the second one maybe. Since I don't know if there's much practicality to having the frigates out front, since once they start shooting me they kind of give away their position to a vague extent. So outside revealing a ship, which I'm not really going to do if I'm trying to chase after him, let's be honest. So their uses here are probably very lackluster, very underwhelming. But right off the bat, we're going to deal with bombers, we're going to deal with the fighters, and alas, I think if I had realized those were bombers on the right, what I would do is boost with the 3 cruisers on the bottom, but you're going to see that a little bit late. And what I mean by that, I'm going to do it right now, as opposed to being a little more decisive. And what this will do is all my point defense are now focused on these bombers, and they're not shooting at the fighters which are supposed to be screening for them. Although, did I actually kill off? Yeah, actually we did kill off the bomber squadron, mainly because my fighters intercepted them. It worked out well in that regard. And now, I do burn the Emperor's Turret on the flagship, and we're going to pursue these heavily. But right off the bat, you can see my frigates are kind of just limping and just immediately going to die. In horrible fashion here. Not really contributing to anything. So that's part of the reason why I feel like they should just hang back. Since I was going to reveal them anyway, I believe. Well, in all honesty, I didn't reveal the one that I'm going to be chasing after, which is the one that's currently concealed. The flagship I'm going to ignore, which may be a waste of my Emperor's Turret as a result, but hey, it has the bonus effect of forcing the flagship to run away. And now, I'm just trying to pinpoint where the ship is. I hear the boosting, and what I'm going to do is a wide berth here. Just try and cover all my bases. Fighters are going to try and reveal on the right arc. So hopefully I can pincer it down along the edge of the map, and at the very least reveal it. Since if I can get in boarding range or even ramming distance, hell, even torpedoes would count, I can very easily just murder this thing in incredible fashion. It's just the bombers that would be terrifying at that close proximity. It is a bit of the exception. But with the fighters being launched and not the bombers, that's not a problem for me anymore. Although with that said, it probably means there's bombers coming behind me. I don't know if I clued into that and trying to prepare for it, but with the fighters currently shooting down my cruiser's point defense, it's not like I'm going to be able to do that. So, I just heard a false maneuver there, so this is where it tips off I try and turn a bit. Although I think they're turning left, in truth, the Voidstalker is turning to the right. That's what the false maneuver was. And with the fighters that I launched earlier, they are going to reveal at least a frigate and the Void Stalker momentarily, I believe. The only thing I regret is not having those fighters a little bit further towards the edge. Because there was a real possibility that Void Stalker could have sneaked by maybe. But Emperor's Tarot's in full effect. This Void Stalker can't go anywhere. And the bombers are slowly starting to wear down my one Tyrant. I think it's a Tyrant anyway. There is slightly different silhouettes. I'm going to have to pay close attention to which ones are Overlords. And I'm assuming the one that got bombs was... I'm distinguishing it from the Dictator, that's probably why. Okay. There is slight difference if you pay attention to the top of the cruisers. So with that said, we found our prey. Now it's just a matter of like pinning this thing down. And since I don't have the convenience of Stasis Bomb, that's a really tall order. And all the while, the flagship is trying to get free shots on me. Slowly but surely they are going to kill off that one cruiser, which is a lot of the reason why I turned our two cruisers that were in back to engage the flagship last time I played up against Asigos. At least on the plus side, I'm getting some good macro cannon shots in. The hull field's going to heavily negate a lot of the macro cannons, but with reload and good awareness of my arc, I could at least do some really good damage to soften up and maybe get some critical hits on the generator to kind of at least allow the Overlords to do a good, consistent damage. Because otherwise, I'm not really gaining a lot of ground at the moment, especially since with Asigos kind of using reload stance to increase the recharge rate of their Wraithbone shift. So we're going to be doing a bit of a cat and mouse type of game, but keep in mind, I am going to be actively trying to grab this one objective. Hell, the only negative maybe would I could have grabbed the one objective off in the middle there, but I think I neutralized that, as opposed to stay around long enough to grab the actual objective. So I am aware of my placement on the map, and that's probably going to be pretty key if what we've seen before against the double Void Stalker fleet. I almost said double Corsairs again, which might as well be the case, I suppose. Either way, Dictator's going to try and deny these bombers. That's going to work out well, but with the combustion gauge burnt, that cruiser's going to take a lot of damage. It's going to be limping, but at least it's going to survive thanks to the fighters. And with its mobility, it can at least evade the Maelstrom some. And the Pulsars apparently are shooting at a different ship altogether, which is fine by me. It only killed the shields mostly. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a big win for me. Since, not even any real hull damage has been done to that one Tyrant with its shields recharging. So that's something you need to be careful of with the Pulsars in any case. But even with my macro cannons and shots, I'm not getting a whole lot of hits in, and those bombers are thankfully being negated, although if Asigos wanted to recall them, it's not like my fighters could have been able to stop them, I don't think. And speaking of which, yeah, I'm boosting to mitigate these bombers. I thankfully was at such an arc that the bombers were not able to hit me at their full strength, so I was able to stall long enough, because I think those bombers have, what, 450 movement? And with my all head full, I think I have 480 movement, so long as I'm not flying directly at them, I can stall the bombers out incredibly well. And I also have a second, Emperor's Tarot to reveal this thing yet again. I am benefiting quite heavily from the lack of gas clouds, is what it's looking like. Since my beacons are definitely going to be incredibly limited unless I can stick it onto the ship somehow. But I think did I hit myself? No, I didn't hit myself with torpedoes. That's what I was worried about when I heard those impacts. But they tried to flank right by me there, and it's not doing them a lot of good. That is a ridiculous amount of boarding. The generators is going to succumb to the might of the macro cannons. So this thing is dead shortly. I just gotta make sure I focus my firepower well enough. And with the 2 fire results, that is 1 dead Void Stalker. And even with me losing 2 of my cruisers, I still have equal, yeah, I'm gonna have a substantial point lead now. It was even up to this point, even though I kind of gave away 2 cruisers for free, arguably. What's gonna be annoying is the fact these fighters are still here, distracting my, point defense, even though I killed the Voidstalker off, so I'm not gonna have a good convenience here. What is thankful here, the bombers are intercepted by the fighters at the convenient time. So I mitigate that damage nicely, even if I still have to get through the dang fighters to get at the bombers. So unlike before, where my fleet was kind of completely scattered after destroying that first Voidstalker, I'm content to try and group these together, with the exception of the one crippled cruiser. It's going to neutralize these points at the very least, while the 3 that are still in full fighting form pursue after our Voidstalker. And I've been doing a terrible job keeping track of how many bomber squadrons I shot down, because that's also going to be an important factor for how aggressive I can get. And with only a single Voidstalker now, it's either 1 fighter squadron or 1 bomber squadron, and the Dictator has plenty of health this time, as opposed to before, to kind of single-handedly deal with any bomber squadrons I might encounter. Thankfully, Stasis Bomb is not going to grab this first one that's being focused down, so it's going to take very minor damage in the Maelstrom. Gotta be very careful of this other one, which is also out of the Stasis Bomb. So very minor damage for a 3-minute cooldown. Sadly, my torpedoes were negated. I would have loved to force a repair of some kind there, to kind of punish any type of critical hits that I could have gotten on afterwards. And I got Emperor's Tar on that thing too again. This upgrade, this skill has been incredibly handy, but due to the sparse nature of all the gas clouds, it does remain to be seen how effective I can pursue my opponent if there were more in the middle of the map for these Voidstalkers to kind of conceal themselves. Although, to an extent, I can use my beacon to help with that too some, since it's been doing almost nothing for me this match. So I think we found a perfect way to fall back on that. But otherwise, I am committing to getting aggressive here. The torpedoes, as much as I would love them to hit, are more to force it to turn, to force this thing to keep moving ideally. And since it's in reload stance, keep in mind too, it's not like they could shoot 270 degrees with that Voidstalker. And we get ourselves some free shots on these frigates. Despite the lack of control, they are going to be tricky to hit. They can almost dodge those macro cannons without really trying, if they do any kind of movement at all. Or at least if they do a sudden turn, they can pretty much dodge those macro cannons really damn well. As we're going to see, since these frigates are going to survive until the very end of this match, I believe. Even with the vision I currently have. And I'm assuming they're not on solid running. At least not currently, since I do still have vision on them. And sadly, with these fighters currently up, I'm not getting to utilize the gas cloud as much as I would like. Not yet, but that's going to change in a moment, since the one that's being focused is currently hitting at least. Which does help a lot, since there's almost no way for the Voidstalker to reveal the ship until the frigates come back. Now it's Emperor's Tar to keep it visible. It's definitely a lot more trickier to kind of pursue these things, but I still got a nice point lead. I am messing up on my objective grabbing. This is the second time I failed with this time of grabbing that one objective. So I could have gotten at least another 100 points advantage at this point. So that's a little unfortunate, since I mainly just forgot to turn off my all-head full is the main reason why I'm messing up on that. And I do have fighters to immediately deal with the bombers. They are not a threat. It's just the firepower from the Voidstalker itself to concern myself with. And sadly, that Voidstalker, or not Voidstalker, but my Overlord, is about to get killed off. There's not really a whole lot I can do there. But we are down to 3 cruisers. 2 of them are still in good health, and one of which is thankfully the Dictator. It may not do a lot of damage macro can wise, but it's going to get out of this Stasis Bomb. It's going to burn more of the Maelstrom. And it is intimidating as hell because of these fighters. I just gotta make sure I don't run out of my charges, which, thankfully, I have 2 good charges. And when I see the fighters, I just recall them. There's no need to get into a fighter fight, especially when I'm obviously gonna lose that bout with 4 fighter squadrons. But as soon as the bombers come out to play, this dictator's gonna single-handedly deal with them. I just gotta somehow mitigate as much of this firepower as possible, especially now that I have 4 objectives, and these frigates are gonna take an eternity to even neutralize a point. So I'm in good shape, and with the 4 points, I'm trying to do the math quickly in my head, so it's about 2 minutes till a victory for me, essentially, so long as these points aren't neutralized, at least pretty close to 2 minutes. And when I kill off these frigates, that helps a ton. That's an additional 74 points right there, with maybe an error. Nope. Although, they are basically killing themselves there. There's a fire assault on the one that's crippled, I think. So that should burn to death. And these torpedoes haven't really been doing a whole lot. I could aim them slightly better, maybe. Oh, never mind. I guess they repaired off the fire assaults, but hey, our fire assault on the 3rd one, it's about to die. This is a victory. It's just a bit of a mess, isn't it? And in all honesty, I don't really like dealing with these double foil stalkers. It seems so... What's the proper term? It seems flimsy. I understand why most players are utilizing the double foil stalker fleet, because they fall into the illusion that maybe it's the better type of fleet with the extended range. It definitely can be if you don't know how to deal with it. I can understand that. But to me, this is as boring as can be. The only loss I can recall recently against foil stalkers was when I was experimenting with a bunch of light cruisers and a custodian, and that's when I learned that spear crystal lenses negated my shield recharge, and I learned about that bug. Okay, match number 2, and we're face off against Necron yet again, and at the very least, this has been a good opportunity for me to start practicing my diligence, especially when you consider that we're dealing with mass recall this time around. So being able to have the quick response with what we see, and if they jump on top of me, I don't really have the convenience of hitting them with torpedoes as I would like, which can be a little bit awkward, needless to say, since I'd rather not have to burn so much of my combustion gauge to kind of get out of range and then turn around. Not only do I miss out on a good amount of firepower that way, but with the Scarab Swarm, that's a possibility as well, at least being utilized in this one match. I would like to preserve that so I can at least get out of range of that thing to minimize the damage too. Only thing I'm not sure about is how aggressive I should get on ramming, since we are dealing with mass recall, we are dealing with double tomb ships essentially. So I have not really spent the time to see if the ramming damage is worth it, since we're hitting something that's so much bigger than us and has a lot more health at that. Since when I was faced off against Volpez, I was completely surprised after the fact on how much damage my fleet actually took, since Volpez did not have the dispersed lightning arc to hit all my ships at once. Sure, they had the arc propagator, for the particle whip, but that only hits like 2 ships and not an entire fleet. And the Scarab Swarm should at total do only 450 damage, I think. I believe it lasts only 45 seconds anyway. So that should only be like a small fraction of my health, basically a quarter of my health. So after the Scarab Swarm completely finished, I was completely shocked against Volpez at the very least when I was so low health, and a lot of that may have to do with the ramming damage, since I realistically expect like maybe 1 or 2 ships to be really low health and the rest to be at least still in fighting form. Since the Star Pulse generators are not really a offensive weapon, well, it's like I said, they're not an offensive weapon. They're really meant to destroy fighters, bombers, torpedoes ideally, which is almost an impossibility, I will admit, against Imperial Navy. Which is why trying to get that practice down and keeping my fleet at least spread out a decent amount so that way I can get those torpedo hits in really quickly, really early, and score a capital ship kill as quickly as possible, especially when we're dealing with 2 tomb ships after all. Otherwise, the 2 fighter squadrons miss each other there. I'm aware that they're both tomb ships. We saw a silhouette conveniently of them as they were launching fighters, so I know exactly what to expect, and I even see the upgrades here. Interestingly enough, we have the unstable pulse core, which really only increases the damage potential on the star pulse generator by, what, 15% or 50% rather. And considering my armor, that's easily mitigated quite heavily, which is a lot of the criticism why the star pulse generator probably is not a good weapon to use. It can do notable damage, I suppose, on the side, but if it hits only my shields, then it does full damage, but that's kind of what the shields are also meant for to a vague extent. And since this frigate is dodging a lot of these shots because of the wreckage, I decide to use my frigate, my destroyer, my Cobra, as a bit of a bulldozer to kind of push that out of the way, since they're not really going to serve a whole lot of use unless I'm diligent enough to fire a couple of torpedoes while they're distracted.
Fury interceptors in flight.
Otherwise, I'm preparing myself to try and get some free shots in. Hell, I'm trying to target my overlords, which in this case I have them separated into 2 separate groups to make it a little bit easier to control maybe, and that's something I'm going to have to experiment with more. Otherwise, I'm trying to spot or figure out where the light cruiser, the flagship, is. I launched the fighters over on the far right, but in truth, it's hugging the left edge right along that other tomb ship there, I believe, since it's going to jump directly behind me at a certain point. But I do launch the fighters in the arc I'm going to kind of prepare me, at least to a limited extent, on any surprises that may come from directly in front. Since if they jump behind me, then at least that helps me with at least my positioning to get range for a torpedo assault. Frigates were not long-lived though. They did not last very long, and I should in all seriousness be targeting the tomb ships, which thankfully I do as I say that. Since that's about 100 points of damage I could have got on this cairn right now. And all the free damage I can get is a boon, because I'm checking the range on the lightning whip. So I'm hugging that zone quite well. Hell, I probably should switch over to reload at this point, since lock-on is not very helpful with how hard it is to get a critical hit on a battleship. So reload probably could have been pretty good here, outside the slight accuracy bonus, but we are getting hits in nonetheless. And there's the light cruiser, and I believe that's a Kopej, judging by its health, but it jumps in there immediately. The star pulse generator only really takes out the shields of 2 ships, alas. So not too terrifying. But I got the torpedo arc I want now. Star pulse generators are gone. Sadly, that was a terrible torpedo salvo, and I think that one was too close. So 2 with torpedo salvos, but we got 2 more that strike true in a moment. And with the boarding, I'm going to try and cripple the other one really nicely. Now, they jump, the plasma bomb is down, but this flagship's going to die incredibly quickly, and it's not going to get much opportunity for any more plasma bombs. But everything else is still in fighting form because I did mitigate a lot of the Scarab Swarm damage. So that's thankful at least there. And hell, I am getting critical hits on that Kopej as well. Keep in mind, it is a light cruiser, so it suffers from the full critical hit chance of what my ships can bear to it. And then the flagship's nowhere nearby to repair any critical hits on the other ships too. But my focus is clear. I want to kill off this goddamn cairn right now. So this time I am not planning on fumbling it. First salvo strikes true, second blind shot. Another solid hit. And since they burnt their inertialess drive, I am very confident we can capitalize on more torpedo hits. Not quite a kill, but it is some damn close, and keep in mind I have armor-piercing ammo. I did not take the Kulex's Assassin, although thankfully I did not take it at least, because with how quickly my flagship died, I probably would not have gotten more than one boarding attempt on there, but that actually could have caused this one to at least mutiny right now. So whether it was the Coolex's Assassin or armor-piercing ammo, I basically would have taken out one tomb ship at this point. So morale damage or just straight up damage, it mattered not essentially. So at the end of the day, I'm kind of thankful that they jumped their ship behind, or was it? The fleet was behind me at least. The flagship was in a terrible position and it got focused down, but at least everything else was in a good position to kind of capitalize on that. I just gotta make sure I don't whiff my torpedoes as badly as I did, since again, I missed with 2 good salvos from either being too close or just not aiming it properly. But a pretty nice solid victory, and I still do question the need to be super aggressive on Necron ideally. Since again, they have perfect accuracy, so it's not like it benefits them too much to get close outside the Scarab Swarm. So why not let your opponent get to you? Is honestly my question, but I need to play more Necron to really say that with certainty. But I think I'm starting to get it down. That's the one main benefit of at least focusing on a faction for at least several weeks or at least a good handful of matches. Since I am kind of victim to my own devices to a small extent, with constantly jumping between factions beforehand. So I'm really happy for the opportunity to refine my play. Okay, so we're going to be face off yet again against Corsairs, and this time they are not going to be utilizing the Blood Axes, although I do contemplate whether I should use the beacon or not, but hey, the last thing I want to do is to try and beat my opponents through possible metagaming, since in truth I should be the one being victim to that, since I am kind of recklessly giving away what my playstyle and thought process is after all. So if anyone should lose by that, it should be me, so I do contemplate, but I give Corsairs the benefit of the doubt. But thankfully, with them going the traditional Evil Suns as opposed to the Blood Axes, that benefits me incredibly well. I'm just a little bit upset that I don't get to practice my awareness game to try and suss out where the Blood Axe fleet would be. So I am robbed a little bit in that regard. But I am arguably pretty comfortable with the possibility of fighting a Mega Can type of fleet. I feel like anyway. It's been so long since I had practical experience with them. Since a lot of my experience that I'm trying to base it off of is back in Armada 1, and how armor functioned there is so drastically different, since it's a % chance to ignore damage, as opposed to it being a damage reduction, as it is in Armada 2. And Brace for Impact also gave a temporary buff to boost your armor up to at least 95% chance of resistance. So when you use your prow in conjunction with the Brace for Impact, their Mega Cans are almost never doing any damage to me, and when they do, rarely, then it hurts. But that's kind of its main strength at the same time with my Brace for Impact play. You don't really feel a thing, and it gives you that opportunity to kind of fly into them, ram them, or even fly past them, since even though this probably will be a close range slugfest, I do have the superior mobility on top of the potential better ramming damage. It's just the sheer health pool that I'm going to have to deal with. And if I ram their prow, it's another question of if that benefits me or not. A lot of the same reason where I talked about with Necron last time, or last match. And seeing all these ships not revealed, I immediately go into my detection mode, but they're just hitting the gas cloud, they're just hitting in the asteroid belts. We will see them momentarily, don't worry about that. So, I can kind of rest easy in that regard. So, I group everything up. I was going to turn my Dictator to kind of do the same thing as I did before, just fly across the map, so I can recall the fighters to maybe get a good vision arc on the right, the right corner of the map, through possibly the middle, and reveal at least something. So we don't have to worry about that now. My frigates are not necessarily in the best spot to reveal their ships though, but that shouldn't be too much of a big deal since I think Corsairs actually reveals their ships to me pretty shortly. And I kind of already can tell with 5 capital ships that we're kind of dealing with a heavy amount of battleships at the very least.
Ready.
And there they are being revealed now. At least the 3 battleships. And just now I think the cruisers were also revealed if I'm looking at that properly on the minimap. So we're all good here. I just probably did do my turn a little bit too early because I'm trying to prepare to get that softening up damage. I could have probably pressed a little bit further, maybe try and secure the gas clouds a little bit, or at the very least engage them where Corsairs is nowhere near the gas cloud to maximize my damage potential. But what I do try and do is I'm going to be lobbing a bunch of torpedo salvos here. Mainly I think it's only 3 torpedo salvos I fired though. But since we have 6 charges of torpedoes, this is where I try and take advantage of that, at least to a limited extent. Although maybe I should have fired them all at once there, kind of help a little bit. And do I hit myself here? I don't think I do. But thankfully, yeah, the assault boats are kind of immediately shot down. And hell, I had fighters there anyway. So that wasn't a big issue. And this is kind of what was unfortunate. I went to repair, accidentally scanner pulsed, and I fly into my own torpedoes. I did myself a disservice there. And that's going to be important to keep in mind for later on this match. But I am now in firing range, at least with the overlords. And this is where I value the overlords most. Sure, the tyrants are going to be a lot more restricted, but with the greatly increased critical hit chance on these cruisers and even the battleships, anything I can do to connect is definitely worthwhile. So, sadly, my one frigate is pretty much screwed, pretty much dead at this point. It is protected by a dictator's fighters though, surprisingly enough as is. But one sap cannon basically kills that off, which we're going to see in a moment. And with the Mark, it's not going to be able to conceal itself in time as a result. And that's a bit of an issue because now we have all these gas clouds. So in truth, I killed my own ship. And it could have been really damn helpful there. It's a little unfortunate, but it's a learning experience, and I did have it pushed for aggressively, kind of in preparation for blood axes. But if you remember what I said about Corsairs, and also keep in mind, I failed twice, I believe, to grab this one objective with this frigate. It's been flying off the objective marker multiple times, I think. And then I ultimately give up. But it could have revealed these ships, give me a lot more time to do damage. And yeah, it could have immediately revealed these ships once they cleared the gas cloud too. That's another factor as well. Since it could have stayed hidden for a good while, and it definitely wouldn't have had the durability. But I was going to make a comment about, oh yeah, this is another reason why maybe I should hang back with the frigates to a limited extent. And not leave them so freely they get kind of pinned down, or at least isolated. Since I feel like the frigates could have been so much more helpful long term, but those are, needless to say, incredible torpedo shots. I'm just sad the third one wasn't at least a melted torpedo to kind of help capitalize on this. And a little unfortunate I take some ramming damage. And most of my ships do get stuck in the stasis bomb. What is it, just 2 of them? Because the other 2 are about to get out in a moment. But now we're going to get ourselves into the thick of this fighting. Really good damage, at least on the battleships early on. Now I just gotta make it stick. And I do switch to brace for impact, which I wonder if I should have gone with reload instead, but this helps deal with damage and maybe some morale potential. Because now we're going in hot melted torpedoes. And sadly only 2 hit there. I would have loved that to have been 3 melted torpedoes. And I miss barely with those torpedoes as well. But 3 fire assaults alone is probably enough to kind of force that thing to kind of mutiny really damn quickly. The only thing that could have made that better was maybe burning or firing those melted torpedoes on the flagship. And right now, okay, 2 of my ships have been boarded quite notably. but now, when I get myself turned around, I could fire some more torpedoes at a good broadside arc, and hell, these things have taken a bit of a beating. Good torpedo salvo there, that's an amazing hit, and I think I go in for the ramming kill. Ramming myself a tiny bit with those two cruisers down below, but nice salt start. These fighters should have been maybe bombers or assault boats, since I don't think these fighters are helping me a whole lot, alas. Unless I was just worried about more assault ships. But more torpedoes there, mutiny on the second battleship. And sadly, the flagship is dead, so yeah, I could not rally this one mutiny ship, alas. But 2 battleships are gone. 2 cruisers are really close to at least suffering the first mutiny. And we have fire assaults and perfect timing on these torpedoes to try and maximize damage. And then, the wreckage of the battleship kind of gets in the way. It still pays out well, but I was aiming for the 1 cruiser. But 3 torpedoes on the battleship still damn impressive. I just need to destroy the deck for me to really capitalize on it and force it out of the fighting. Now let's see, that thing's on all sorts of fire. I try to do my boarding to maybe get a little bit extra morale damage in. And if possible, maybe, well, I seriously doubt I'm going to kill off a third of the crew, but I thankfully don't ram myself. The battleship rams my cruiser because of that tracked cannon. And now I'm tracking for what still has torpedoes available to it, since almost all my engines are kind of crippled at this point. And the mutinies are kind of sticking. And was that another melted torpedo? I think that was another melted torpedo I just shot. Either way, the battleship's pretty much screwed. We got a handful of frigates, but the frigates on the bottom left there have, well, actually we're dealing with 4 objectives being stolen right now, alas. And, ooh, let's see, I shouldn't have looked to see what the cooldown was on my Commissar's summary execution. Since right now we are getting really, well, actually all these ships basically died, but since I'm about to lose this 1 cruiser here to a couple of frigate shots, I think this 1 ship's just gonna burn to death. Now we're in the awkward predicament though, where I have to deal with 3 frigates still, or I think it's 4 frigates, honestly, since there's 1 right next to us here, and having to neutralize these points. Since it's still anybody's game there, but technically I did win that engagement, as far as fighting the battleships and all that. It could have been a little bit better just again, because that 2nd frigate could have spotted them for me and gave me some more free damage. And I burnt out my combustion gauge, which doesn't help in this regard either, because I could get here a lot faster. And this will drag on to our conclusion of the battle. Can I neutralize enough points, since I don't realistically expect to neutralize all 4 points. I'm hoping maybe I could slow it down enough, but losing that Overlord kind of compounds that some. And this other one's about to escape into the battlefield as well, so that's going to be another 90 points. So ultimately it is going to come down to trying to kill off these frigates, I think. And I'm pretty certain it's just the 3 that are left here. The one that we're engaging now with the Cobra, and the 2 that are coming to me as well. Try as I might to get a torpedo arc, it did not happen there. Yeah, 83, was it 85 points for the Tyrant, it looked like. So I'm down to 300 points to try and get this. But they burnt their scanner pulse. Those 2 fire assaults, I believe, will kill off this frigate. So I'm feeling really comfortable on that, and if I can keep this frigate alive, it arguably could kill another frigate for me, especially with the mutiny that it's about to suffer again. Sadly, I burnt my combustion gauge, so I was not prepared for that boost engagement. If I had just dodged that, that would have worked out well. Since again, there's only 2 frigates, the Dictator, or not the Tyrant here, could have easily dealt with 1 if I made good use of my combustion gauge. But as it stands now, I'm kind of forced to kill off these frigates. I can't neutralize these points fast enough to give me more breathing room. Especially with the one Overlord getting killed off, keep that in mind too. And another factor is because I failed grabbing that bottom left objective multiple times with my frigate. That would have, yeah, it's been another minute of time those frigates would have spent there trying to capture it. And that technically would have gave me another minute almost of extra time to kill off these frigates. So far I managed to neutralize 3 of the points for him, but I don't have enough time, alas. And if that Cobra was still alive, and hell, even that very first one that I killed myself could have been instrumental for this. So again, I should try and learn to keep those frigates back, unless it's absolutely essential for certain matchups. Like Tyranids, it's important to have them kind of reveal the ships. Maybe Drukhari I can afford to maybe have them hang back a bit, since again with their mobility and rate bone shift, they can very easily avoid the macro cannons at long range. So I kind of would have to go with the same mindset, potentially, as I did with the double Voidstalker fleet. So it was my own undoing in a lot of ways, and a lot of little minor things could have helped me a ton.